I don't know if you guys happen to kind of see like the workflow document I made.
Took a glance at it.
Yeah, I'm basically like, because I kind of anticipated this too, like as soon as we posted the form, we got inundated with people requesting us to look at things.
Good. The system
Which
works.
is exactly the point, right? So to kind of organize it a bit, I know we're going to be doing our ongoing review from top to bottom, but I kind of figured we divide it into 3 sections. One, request from the select board for us to look at, go to the top of the list. Other requests from residents go second, and then we can do our ongoing review third. And the idea is that as we do the ongoing review, if we come across anything, hopefully we can address those, or residents can weigh in when we get to those sections. And then as for if somebody wants us to look at something, we can kind of put it ahead of the list. And then by the time we get to that section, we've already looked at it. So then we can go to the next one. How does that sound to everyone?
Residents and staff.
Yeah, right. When I say residents, I meant residents and staff. Correct. So I know we do already have a request from the select board, which was actually going to be one of the sections we were going to be looking at this week anyways. Let me just pull up the agenda here really quick. Did everybody have a chance to look over those sections of the bylaws already?
Yeah.
Awesome. So, okay. Just for posterity, we're going to do a quick roll call. Tom Morelli, present.
Carl Hummel, present.
Christina Campbell, present.
Joanne Lamoth, present.
Thank you. And did you have a chance to review Carl's minutes?
Yep.
Okay. I'll accept the motion to approve the minutes of the December 5th meeting then.
I motion to approve the December 5th meeting minutes.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor?
I think we need to take a roll call vote because we're online.
Yep. I was going to say all in favor, say aye and your name.
Carl Hummel, aye.
Tom Morelli, aye.
Christina Campbell, aye.
Joanne Lamoth, aye.
Thank you. So we're going to dive right in. Chapter 2 of the general bylaws.
Is that what the select board requested?
That is what the select board requested. And they specifically wanted us to take a look at a few different forms going on here. Just looking at his comments. For section 2, yeah, the section that talks about the annual meeting for the election of town officers, which is the annual town election. So basically, this was written. Oh, first of all, did anybody have any thoughts about chapter 2 in general besides section 2 that the select board wanted us to look at?
I do. Section 15. At the town meetings that I've been, I've never seen a voice vote. So that's why I was wondering, does that still hold?
The answer is no. We're using an
Yeah.
electronic token, which is a
Right,
secret ballot.
so that would have to be rewritten, I would imagine. Or somehow incorporated in another.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So,
Dan, do you have a question?
Dan?
You're muted.
Oh,
Sorry. I don't know if I sent this in or if it was on the other list of smaller items. You might consider something to allow for the use of the clickers. I think we were kind of just pretending that they were a secret ballot, but now that we've used them,
I think that's how we decided that they were a secret ballot.
But also I would comment too, I'd be hesitant to delete any options because if the clickers break
Right.
down and don't work, I could see a circumstance in which we might still need to use the old-fashioned way.
I think the best way to deal with that is to have a vote at the beginning of town meeting to allow the use of the clicker.
So
In
would that
effect,
be
in effect, 10 voters rising in their place to
Right.
say they want a secret ballot. You say at the beginning, we're going to do that for all of them.
right? So are we saying? I mean, if we do that, it wouldn't defeat the bylaws. That they wouldn't go out of turn with the bylaws that as they're written. Because at that point, what the moderator is doing is calling for a secret ballot on each item.
Right.
So
But you want to have some language in the bylaws that say the moderator gets to do that without having to have a request by 10 people.
Yeah.
So you change it to say, at their discretion, the moderator may choose to have a secret ballot.
Yeah.
And then we may also want to add something to say electronic clicking is acceptable, because electronic balloting, we have problems. One of the things I noticed last year when I first used it is there's no way to verify that my vote actually got counted the way that I wanted it to get vote.
there is a way, not
I'd have to look at the number on my ticker and then go at the end of the meeting and say, show me what my
Yeah.
votes were. But you don't
Okay.
say that. I figured that was
Yeah.
probably the case because I know electronics voting systems.
Well, right, we don't know whose clicker. I do have a further thought on this though, because Upton, and I maybe check with Ellen, Upton has gone through this. We're very fortunate right now that we have a moderator that supports this initiative, but in the future, if we had a moderator that thought electronic voting was bad, then we would have just spent a bunch of money so this stuff could sit on a shelf. So I also wonder if maybe the bylaw might require the use of this method or something. You know, like I said, I don't know how they resolved it in Upton, but I think for a long time there were certain people that were very against it that fought it. So just another can of worms.
The secret ballot speeds things up, but it destroys the ability of a community to look at each other and determine cultural norms. If you force the same people to stand up and vote against something every time, they get a reputation for good or for ill, and you
Yeah.
lose that with
Yeah.
the secret ballot.
But by the same note, though, people sometimes feel socially pressured to vote one way or another. And
Right.
I've had people say, "Oh, I tried to stack." I've had people come up to me and say, "I've tried to stack the meeting," and I count the amount of votes were less than the amount of people I brought out here, and I said, "Great, then it's working perfectly." I personally like the ability for people to not feel pressured to vote one way or another and actually get swayed by people's arguments in the meeting. Personally, if people want to, if you're talking about people getting a reputation for voting a certain way, I mean, they get the same reputation by speaking up for one thing or another, right?
Yep.
So that's how I feel about that. I don't want people to feel socially pressured just because certain people will look at them and see other voting, and I prefer it. I prefer people to be able to, I mean, it'd be different if this is a legislative body where people are elected representatives and should be held accountable for their votes, but that's not what we are. We're a body made up of all eligible voters in town. That's my thought, at least. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I can tell you personally, I like being able to use the clicker and not having to stand up and have 10,000 people turn around and look and see who voted how, where, or what, you know? So to me, I like the clicker. It makes people vote the way they want to vote. And like you said, not pressured to say, oh, my friends are standing up voting no or voting yes. I got to stand up so that I don't get the pressure.
Right. So how do we, when we are making these suggestions and changes, do we want to discuss them here? Assign someone to write some new language and come back to the next meeting with the new language and approve it as a board?
I think that makes sense, but there needs to be an additional step that for certain items, we invite members of the public to come and comment.
Yeah, absolutely.
For example, a bylaw that will change the way people vote at town meeting, I expect will generate a lot of heat. If we surprise it with people at town meeting, it's going to be a big mess.
Right. Okay. Because section 16, I think I can come up with some language to allow for us to use the electronic voting method in line with what we just discussed. And perhaps maybe we can review that language next meeting, and then schedule a following meeting for kind of like a public info session, or
Yes.
get the public to weigh in, and before we take a vote on whether to approve the language or not, to send to the select board. How does that sound? We could do that. We can do that for, we could take several chapters at a time and do that for that, so that we're not like getting bogged down on each one.
The discussion we would want to have with the public is to say, well, we've had default secret voting for the past couple of town meetings. Do people want that to continue, or do they want to go back to the previous way?
Right.
The only reason nobody like me has stood up at town meeting and said, hey, we're supposed to be having standing up votes is because everyone likes the meetings going a whole lot faster.
I agree.
So yes, I think we would want at 15 and 16 to be looked at in together.
Yeah.
In terms of coming up with writing language and then getting it adopted at town meeting to formally transition to a secret ballot by default.
Right.
Well, on all cases, in fact.
I get Dan's point though, and Dan, correct me if I'm misinterpreting what you said. Like at the bottom of whatever our new provision is, we should just reserve language that says like, if something is going wrong, like this ability to stand up is still valid in the event like electronically something is going down.
Well, my thought is we leave section 15 as is. Maybe add something at the end.
No, it has to get added at the beginning. The first sentence of section 15, we are in violation of the past couple town meetings.
Yeah.
So it would be at the discretion of the moderator, we may use secret balloting and leave it at the and do not mention
meeting.
Yeah, for the whole meeting, and do not mention any particular electronic voting system by name. Instead, we would want to have language that says, at the discretion of the moderator, we may choose to use electronic voting. Dan, is the system we're using certified by the state?
Yes, but they're a reputable company. I have no idea if that's a requirement. That's not like it's not like ballot counting boxes that are licensed certified.
I just wondered if the
That's
state
probably an
had
Ellen question.
Okay, so we can check with Ellen.
Yeah, if that's because that's an interesting thought. You probably
We
should
want to
be.
be able to say that you can't just use any old electronic Josh. I could write a
Um,
computer software that would count ballots. What do
yeah,
you want
right.
the results to be would be.
Right, right. So for section 15, perhaps we start it with
That I would say go off and think about the language and come back with something in
okay,
writing.
fair enough.
Post
Well, we know what we want it to say, more or
Yeah.
less. And then I can come up with language to make it say what we want it to say. And then we can
And-
review that language and then put it to the public.
And that's where we actually get Ellen to review it and maybe even town council
Okay.
to make sure that it will
Yeah.
pass muster with the attorney general. Well, I expect that'll happen with anything that we come up with.
Yeah, I mean, what the town council's told me in the past is that anything that moderator says in reference to town meetings within the scope of Mass General Law overrides just about any of this.
Home
So
rule,
what?
home rule.
Right, right. So I mean that's kind of, I wouldn't say we've been in violation, but we should certainly lay it out so that we have a roadmap to go off of. So going back, were those the only sections you that stood out to you, Joanne?
Those were the only two, yeah, that stood out to
Okay.
me.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
let's go back to anybody else have any that stand out to them? Okay. So let's go
Oh.
back to section 2.
I did have a small comment actually, but
What was that?
Section 19, I wonder if you might consider making that a little less restrictive because there's some other venues that you might want to consider. You know, if we had to have a huge joint town meeting, specifically the location is the Valley Chapel in Uxbridge.
But
Yes.
I mean, why would we hold it? Why would we need to hold it at the Valley Chapel?
Capacity. So this allows you to have town meetings at Nipmuc or at BVT. I just, you know, if you
Right.
ever had a situation you need to go somewhere that could seat 900 people,
Yeah, the problem I see,
hopefully
and
never.
this is my whole thing about don't say the name of the electronic voting system in the bylaws. You don't want to be specific like this. I would put a period after geographic boundaries or have something that says outside its geographic boundaries at a venue within X miles. So how far away is this place you're talking about?
So why not, instead of a period, a comma, outside its geographic boundaries? And
Within 20 miles or within 10 miles or something like that.
yeah.
I mean, it's hopefully we never need that, but you never know. You'd hate to be held up by some weird, obscure provision of the bylaw and have to have town meeting in
Right.
7 locations.
Yeah, I just hold on. I mean, I understand why we would need it at
Right.
Nipmuc or BBT, considering, you know, we might have joint town meeting with Upton.
Yeah, and I don't know their capacities. That may be more than enough. I recently had that thought that I know Uxbridge uses that location because it's huge.
Valley Chapel is huge. It's 2 floors.
Yeah.
But
Right.
Yeah,
I'm just
so
trying
I'd
to
say replace the specific names with a mileage.
a comma, provided and be provided that venue is within X miles.
Yeah. Now, here's a question for you, Tom. What town agency is responsible for determining the venue? Is that the select board?
That's a select board.
Okay.
Yeah, the select board determines the location and manner and time.
Yeah, so I'd be comfortable saying restricting it within X miles and because you don't want to have them schedule something in Boston. That could be subject to
Right,
political
right.
hijinks.
Valley
Right.
Chapel is 5.6 miles according to the
10
maps.
mi-
Yeah.
so 10 miles.
Yeah, I like 10 miles. I think 10 miles is fine. I guess my only is BVT within 10 miles? I'm sure it is, but I almost feel like BVT might be farther
is.
away than Valley Chapel is. Okay.
It is further. 7
is.
point something.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So it's actually we're actually close there. Which is fine. I don't see any other venues that are farther away than those two places that we have it at. Those three places rather. So yeah, so section 19, comma, 10 miles. I'm fine with 10 miles. Are you guys fine with 10 miles?
Yep.
Okay. Section 2, any others? I'm going to go back to section 2. Okay. All right. So section 2. So section 1 we recently amended per for approval by the AG to be from the first Friday in May to first, I believe, 2 weeks. Let me just confirm that. Just looking at the meeting minutes. Okay, so the first 2 weeks of May and before the annual town election. If the idea of the of section 2 was for it to be the second Tuesday after town meeting, correct? Perhaps we just want to strike Tuesday occurring 11 days after the first Friday, and instead of shall be held on the Tuesday occurring, shall be held on the second Tuesday following the annual town meeting.
And that doesn't tie it to the month of May.
What?
That you remove the word May and you just say it's 2 Tuesdays after.
After the
Right.
after the annual town meeting. But we've already determined the annual town meeting needs to be within the first 2 weeks of May. So
When you say the first 2 weeks of May, you talking the first full 2 weeks of May, or it's from May 1st to 2 weeks out?
the bylaw that was passed at the annual town meeting or at the special town meeting was held within the first 2 weeks of May.
I would read
And
that as 1 to the 14th.
before the annual town election.
Okay.
That's what the language says. So my thought is the second Tuesday after the annual town meeting fulfills the same purpose as the way the original bylaw is written.
I'd want to take a look and see whether that might cause it to be on Memorial Day. 14 and
Well,
then
Memorial
going 2 weeks
Memorial Day
out.
is always a Monday.
Okay.
So I believe Memorial Day is always a Monday.
It
I
is.
thought-
It's always on Monday.
Okay.
Okay.
I just suggest wordsmithing that in such a way that it's crystal clear that it is the Tuesday following the date of the town meeting, so there's no ambiguity. That's all. Because
Well, yeah,
unfortunately,
I
in
think
hindsight, I'm realizing what we voted maybe was not the most clear, as Joanne just pointed out.
Because they didn't
Yeah.
have a bylaws review committee pointing out, do you
Right.
mean 1 to 14 or do you count
Right.
partial week?
Right, and that's why it kind of makes it confusing. If you're saying 1 to 14, then this year it would be Tuesday the 20th would be the the next town, whatever would,
Right.
But if you're talking the first full 2 weeks, then like Kyle said, he looked at, is it Memorial Day? So it's
Yeah.
kind of like half one,
Well-
sixth of another.
So like the Tuesday 11 days following the first Friday in May is how it's written there, which in essence makes it the second Tuesday after town meeting.
Which would be the 27th then, if you're
Right.
looking at this year.
Right. So again, my thought is if you have it within the first 2 weeks, regardless if that, the first day falls on a Friday, you still it still gives time to hold the election in the same, roughly the same amount of time as this current bylaw allows.
Okay, so something to follow up with the select board and Ellen, who runs elections, is would you be okay if that voting happened the day after Memorial Day, or is that bad for town hall, having it right after people come back?
I can follow up with them on that.
Yep.
And stop. Restless, I apologize. So okay, so moving on. So are we all good on chapter 2 with we're looking at section 2, section 15, section 16, section 19 having changes. Okay. So that covers the request from the select board. Then move on to some requests from a certain Dan Byer, who is here, who wanted us to discuss animal control. I believe that's section
7.
section 7 within chapter
That's at page 19.
Chapter 9, section. No,
Chapter
chapter
9,
11, section 7.
chapter 11, section 7. All right. What are your thoughts, Dan?
So my comment here is just formatting. This has made me crazy since I got involved doing this. For some reason, they started this in this special provisions, but then within the section, they kept going. So it's got section 7, section 8, section 9, goes all the way through, and then you'll see it ends at section 15, and then we start over again with chapter special provisions, section 8, Council on Aging. So I think the animal control needs to be pulled out into its own chapter, which probably needs to be a vote.
Yeah.
I had no comments on the content. It makes me crazy. I don't know why this happened. Maybe they did it and amended it later. Probably more likely. However, I just heard today, you should talk to Ellen. It sounds like there's a bunch of changes from the state coming down, something to do with kennels. So there might be other changes to this bylaw that we're going to have to do that Ellen will have to look into. I only heard it in passing, but
Maybe we hold off on this one.
I just want to fix the formatting.
Okay.
I didn't think Mendon had animal control.
We have no leash law, but we still have an animal control officer.
Is it the one out of Blackstone,
It's a regional.
Kevin
Kevin
Sullivan.
Sullivan? Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yep.
It's all the like the dog licensing, kennel licensing. That's mostly what's in here. I will warn you that if you attempt to make any change to the so-called leash law, that will be an incredibly busy discussion, because the last time this was at town meeting, I recall it being very contentious, but just so you're aware.
I didn't know we didn't have a leash law in town.
It's very confusing. We define a nuisance dog as a dog. I gotta find it again. The dog has to be under your direct control.
8.11.
So it literally doesn't have to be leashed, but if the dog doesn't respond to you, then it can be a violation. I forget, it's in here somewhere. Oh, at large. A dog off the premise of its owner or keeper and not under the control of a person, capable of preventing the dog from being a threat to public safety, biting other animals. So however you define control of a person, it doesn't necessarily be a physical leash. But you can't just have your dog running down the street either.
So if we were to change this, so we would have to pull this out into chapter 34, right?
I'd say you'd make a motion to move this into chapter 34 and replace this with section 7, C, chapter
and then we
34.
Then we change section 8 to section 7, section 9 to section 8, so on and so forth.
I would actually leave chapter 11, section 7 as a placeholder that just forever says C chapter whatever, and not renumber anything, and then
This
renumber
page-
the dog one.
This
Be like
page
the-
intentionally left blank.
Yeah, exactly.
Be
And then
like this.
renumber animal control so it's 1 through whatever instead of 7 through 15. Even that could be tricky, depending on how much this is cited.
So, I mean, that one, I mean, does everyone agree with that?
Agree with what?
Moving it out into its own chapter? I mean, it seems fairly explanatory to me.
We probably want to wait a year until we bring it to town meeting because it's not as critical as other things.
Yeah.
Unless
can-
there's
we
a
can-
new kennel law, which the select board tells us we have to update this.
So do we want to revisit this when we get down to this part of our ongoing review?
One of the action items that I have highlighted from today's meeting, ask Ellen if new kennel laws are coming from the state.
Right.
If the answer is yes, then it gets bumped up on our list. Otherwise, it can go in the queue.
Sounds good.
I would just add, and I don't know what your goal is, but anything you can do to combine things into a town meeting, even if they're separate articles. Every time we change the bylaws, there's a whole bunch of paperwork that has to go to the state. It's a whole process to revise the document. It's anything to it. Like if you have a bunch of housekeeping, you could have one article that's 37 different housekeeping changes.
And then somebody like me says,
know.
I move to split the question.
Well, that could happen, but that's town meeting. But at least my point is close it all out. As opposed to big changes, maybe you do vote on separately because there is major discussion on them.
Yeah. I
But every time we have to amend these at town meeting, it's a ton of work.
I mean, I'm not opposed to like grouping a ton of small language changes together. It just might, the only thing is it might get confusing for people.
Yeah.
We just have to be prepared to have a very good PowerPoint deck that Dan
Yes.
presents during the slide to say before, after, red line changes.
Right, exactly. Okay, so pending Ellen's response, we're gonna table this for now. Does that sound good to everyone? So I'm gonna move to Dan wanted to talk about a noise ordinance and door-to-door solicitation bylaw. I mean, let's talk about these together because neither of these are bylaws that are on the books.
So I don't have any specific thoughts. I just wanted to bring them to your attention as there seem to be two topics that come up very frequently from residents online. And I think it'd be worth contacting, at least with the solicitation. It looked like there were some people that had done some work on it. I think Bellingham had done something, and then council said it couldn't be done. I just know every time there's door to door, then somebody starts talking about it, and then noise is the other one. And in both cases, I think they could be some pretty contentious discussions. But I think they're things that people have a right to vote on, and if they don't want it, they'll vote it down. But at least there's a duty to propose something and see what people think about it.
So right now, if a solicitor comes into the town of Mendon, they don't even have to go to the police station to register or anything?
I believe there's some sort of state law, and I'm not
Yeah.
fully confirmed on how it all works, but there's basically very little restriction. And then I think the other side of it is I think it becomes a First Amendment violation if you start restricting the type of content that can go door to door.
Right.
Here's the killer argument against a bylaw. Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think I put in the email, I would reach out. I think Kurt was part of it, and there was some other gentleman online that had done some research. So maybe get their thoughts and
So
post it. Like you were saying about the other day about a hearing, maybe that's one to post and say, hey, we're discussing this on this date. Come to the meeting. We want your thoughts.
So what's Kurt's last name and where can I get his contact?
Belafonte.
Can you spell it?
Oh, I don't know. He's on Facebook.
B-E-L. I know. I think it's B-E-L-F-O-N-T-E maybe? Or B-E-L-L-I-F-O-N-T-E?
I'm friends with him on Facebook. I can reach out to him if you'd like.
Yes.
I can reach out to him and get his thoughts, and I guess like what I'd like to know are what the elements of like what are the elements of what a solicitation bylaw would have to be here.
Yeah, I don't know. From what I understand, they copied Bellingham's, they brought it up, and town council said, oh no, you can't do it. And I don't know if Bellingham's also got thrown out, but they started doing a petition and then it all fell apart, so I don't know.
Okay, here's my action item. Tom will ask Kurt Belafonte about door-to-door solicitation. If he thinks it's got legs, then invite him to come to a future meeting.
That sounds good.
Pitch.
That sounds good to me.
If he can come up with his proposed wording, give it to us in writing. If not, we'll do it during the meeting, after the meeting.
That sounds good to me. The other one was the noise ordinance.
Yes, I have information on this. I've done research on how other towns and cities do noise ordinances. They typically take one of two approaches. They either go no louder than a fixed decibel amount or X decibels above ambient noise. Some bylaws also have hour restrictions, not before X AM, not after Y PM, where X and Y are different from town to town. The other way is when you are measuring decibel levels, where do you measure it? You measure it at the property line or at the abutter who's complaining about the noise, at their residence window, kind of thing. So my recommendation is, if we're going to pursue this, is we reach out to the police chief and say, what do you think? And be strongly guided by what he feels he's comfortable enforcing in Mendon. And we also find out if he needs special equipment, training, and so on. Now, the pushback against a noise ordinance is, I live up by the middle school. I could hear the fire trucks the other Friday for the parade. I bet they were exceeding a decibel level. I'm pretty sure they were outside of the, if they were definitely going after 7 p.m. How do we allow people to do permitting to have that kind of thing? Or do we just tell people, I'm sorry, you can't run the fire trucks because it exceeds decibel levels?
That was a town-sponsored event, right?
Doesn't matter.
Yes. But unless we language as an exception to town-sponsored events.
I would not say town-sponsored event. I would say with the approval of the select board. because then a private thing may ask permission for the select board and then get it granted. But again, those are, every time you add additional language, it's going to be a longer argument during the town meeting when people are talking about it.
I think.
So,
Sorry.
So that's my current speech. If we're interested, then we would put it on an agenda for a future meeting to talk with the police chief. Maybe Tom, you can talk to your father, who can talk to the police chief, or maybe I'll talk to people at the party on Friday and get their opinions on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could also invite the police chief to come to a future meeting
Mhm.
to discuss this directly. No need to.
I
If
think,
this
yeah.
is something, if this is something we want to consider a priority, we can invite him to a future meeting of ours, and we can really delve into the details.
I think a lot of the frustration I've seen online has been around like construction and jackhammering
blasting.
and things
And the-
things
and
that
the-
fall outside of a site plan review, or, and I know earth removal I think is on one of your lists, but there's
and
other
the
activities
blasting.
that are unregulated that, you know, maybe you don't need to be jackhammering rock from 3 a.m. to 10 p.m. 24 hours. You know, like there's got to be a reasonable way to do that. You know,
Yeah,
but where you're not banning leaf blowers and banning people living their lives, but
And there were people upset about the nonstop jackhammering at Uxbridge Road across
yeah,
from the lake, then followed by a couple of weeks of blasting.
like, you know, I don't know. You know, unfortunately, it could become a referendum on commercial development, which I don't think is the direction you want to go either.
yeah.
But I just know it's come up constantly online.
So I think our next step, I think, is to invite Chief Kersey to a future meeting and get his thoughts, because I mean, either way, he'll be the one that'll have to enforce it, right? And I know one thing he's expressed is his lack of any enforcement ability under the current bylaws.
Yep.
So I'll reach out to him and invite him to a future meeting. Any other thoughts on this? Okay, so hopping back down to our ongoing review, we have section 1 and section 3. Leave. Did anyone have any thoughts on section 1 or on chapter 1? When I said section, I meant chapter. Anything that stood out to you? I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, I think.
Are you're talking about the first page of the
The
109, page 4?
general provisions.
Yeah, that's lawyer talk. So
Yeah.
I don't see it. If town council comes to us and says this needs to be changed, I would be guided by them.
Right.
But other than that, this is pretty much boilerplate.
Yeah, I agree. So we can move on from that. Chapter 3, which is the duties of town officers. There's a lot more meat in this one. I know Dan wrote us on our forum asking for us to take a look at it, the section regarding employees.
Section 10.
Yeah, section 10.
I have a question.
Yes.
The capital planning committee is not a paid committee in the town, correct?
I
Correct.
believe that is correct, yeah.
So would we have to have a bylaw in here for us, since we are the general bylaw review committee for this town?
At the moment, we're an ad hoc committee appointed by the select board.
Okay, I was just curious, that's all.
It's an interesting question. Why some committees are by statute, like CPA, they have the CPA bylaw that creates the CPA commission. But yeah, they're like COAs in here.
The Wetlands Protection Act dictates the Conservation
Yeah.
Commission. You don't have to have a Concom, but if you do, the state law says how it has to be run.
I mean, if you wanted to get crazy, you could pull all that out into its own chapter on committees, but that would
Yeah,
be a
and
massive edit to the bylaws
oh
that's
gosh,
cosmetic
please.
more than functional.
Yeah, I mean, we already give the select board the power to essentially create committees, by giving them the power over all affairs in matters not otherwise provided for in the bylaws.
I mean, that was also done as part of that home rule petition to create that CapEx account.
Right.
So that was back in the 80s. There may have been a reason that was done that way.
Yeah, I just I mean, do you see a need for us to add a bylaw for, I would say, both the general and zoning bylaws committees, or?
The zoning bylaw committee is appointed by the by the planning board.
Right.
So they have their own, which is, here's the difference. We're appointed by the select board. CBA committee appoints to the planning board. So they're both elected.
Right.
So that's why we're not, I was making quite clear to people in the last year that we're not taking over the zoning stuff. We're not going to interfere with them. Instead, we would work with them and anything they came up with that they were willing to talk with us about.
Right. Right. Okay, so any other thoughts on anything other than section 10?
Yeah, section 12 needs to be fixed. Section 12 should not, again, specificity. It should not spell out Conservation Commission. It should not spell out Zoning Board of Appeals. Instead, it should say appointed commission.
So you're suggesting that it would be no elected person can serve on an appointed commission,
Right.
No
so
elected member of those two boards.
or
I
those
mean,
two boards.
Right. You can't be on the Agriculture Commission. You can't be on the Finance Commission. You can't be on, if it's appointed by anybody, you can't be on it.
my thought is,
And
Yeah.
also assessors. Are the assessors elected, and should the Board of Assessors not be
the
allowed to be
assessors
appointed?
are elected, the Parks Commission's elected, the Water Board's elected. So I mean, theoretically, Dan's on the Historic Commission.
Yeah, there are
Dan's
some statutory things too, like you have an elected member of Parks is required to be on the Community Preservation Committee.
right. I mean, I would.
But then they're doing
hope,
it ex officio.
No, they're a voting member in the bylaw.
But ex officio can be voting.
I mean,
It just
my
means
thought,
they're there by virtue of their office, not because if their name isn't attached, their position is.
So my thought is, the reason for this bylaw was because if somebody was part of the Zoning Board of Appeals or Conservation Commission, they're weighing in on the same thing several times. Or because at some point, these are supposed to be checks and balances.
And you could say
Right.
the same thing about the Board of Health.
You could say the same thing about the Board of Health. But for instance, I wouldn't say that the elected Parks Commission, or is a check and balance on the zoning board, like these, the Board of Health, the Conservation Commission, the Zoning Board of Appeals all have quasi judicial authority, right?
So does the Board of Health.
Right.
Did you
Well,
mention that? Yeah.
I just
Sorry. Yeah, you
mentioned.
mentioned
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So I'm thinking, like, when we're looking at this, I mean, I view it as a separation of powers, right? The select board and planning board are elected bodies, that have some executive function. And there's it's more or less like I use this. It's almost like Joe Biden appointing himself to be a Supreme Court justice. You know what I mean? That's the issue with.
You're going to have to work real hard to try and distinguish between the elected planning board and the elected board of assessors in terms of their ability to meddle in people's lives.
Yeah. So I mean, I think I do think, including the board of assessors, anyone who has some sort of like authority that is wide ranging and could also have impacts. Sorry,
Like
my
I said,
dog's
you're going to have a hard time coming up with a way to split the difference here.
right. I mean, it just is a difficult question.
The stated reason for why this was pitched to town meeting was because Mendon is now large enough that we should encourage people to volunteer. It actually ended up targeting 2 people who are
Yeah.
active in town government, and they took it personal.
And I think the stated reason for this was to eliminate some conflicts of interest between those 3 boards that were all, like Tom said, ruling on the same thing. I mean, I think you have, so CPA, you're supposed to have a member of select board, planning board, Concom, parks, so I think to eliminate that would cause a problem. But if there's some way to better define what Tom said.
So you have a comma, except as otherwise defined in Massachusetts state law.
Or elsewhere in the bylaws.
Yeah.
Because, like, for instance,
or historic district.
The historic district committee, it's not a mass general law, but as part of the bylaw requires people from elected boards to be on it.
Mm-hmm.
So section 12 is going to need some work. I mean, my personal thought is nobody on an elected body that has executive power should be able to appoint themselves to a board that has quasi-judicial power.
Now you've got to define executive power.
Right, I understand that.
And it would go up at the top in the definitions section.
Right.
I think that's to argue for listing specific boards, but maybe to Carl's point, there's more boards that should be included in this than.
That's my thought as well, because I mean, you could make a great argument about Board of Health and Board of Assessors.
Well, I would say all elected boards except for the historic district and CPC, and leave it at that.
Right.
So call out the 2 that are exceptions. If a 3rd exception comes along, they can amend the bylaws for it.
So are you talking every elected position in town or just the elected member of bodies?
I would have to think about that because there's a difference between what you're talking about is town officers. The moderator is a town officer.
Correct.
And that's different from serving on an elected board.
Right.
In addition,
the town clerk's a town officer too.
Yes. When you are elected by the ballot,
the tree warden is a town officer.
You're independent is one way of putting it.
Yeah, but the boards are independent too. Right.
But then what about appointed boards? Does that mean that, Jason Cooter can't be on this committee anymore? Because
he's not a voting member.
He's not a voting member.
He's a select board liaison.
Just that could be an issue, to go back to Joyce's point about which boards this applies to, if it's an appointed board that's in the bylaws or a appointed board that just exists.
I think this one we're going to need to do some work on because it's a good question, and I think again, my instinct is that we have to do a couple things here. One, we have to come up with a better reason for this bylaw to be in existence than is currently stated. Two, I think we're going to have to provide some definitions.
Do we want to talk to the people who sponsored this bylaw and get their input? And invite them to a future meeting?
I think that's a good idea.
I believe that was Kathy Schofield was one of them, but I'm not positive.
Correct. It was Kathy Schofield.
Okay. So do you want to take as an action item to reach out to her and ask her to come to a future meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Section 10 was the one Dan wanted to talk about.
Yeah, so my comment on section 10, and then also I think this applies to the larger home rule petition. I think so. The way it's currently written, it states that no person holding elected office in the town of Mendon shall be eligible for employment within the town of Mendon for a period of 1 year. And there's some further things about some different clerical positions. However, I think this is covered in Massachusetts ethics laws, where there's a clear conflict of interest. So, like, the example, so like the Parks Department, or find it better, the Parks Department cannot hire me as a lifeguard. So, like, I clearly have an inside track because I'm a Parks Commissioner. But if I wanted to be a call fireman, those are completely unrelated departments that have no relation, or I wanted to go work in the library. And ethics allows for those and has procedures on how to disclose and what is allowed and what isn't allowed. I think this is overly burdensome and restricts us further than the state ethics. And I think, anyway, that was my thoughts on it.
Two questions. It was approved in 2000. So what happened in 1999 that people wanted to make this happen? And when did the state ethics law come into force? Was that after 2000?
My guess is the state ethics laws, or some semblance of them, were always in force. I think this and that home rule petition, I'm checking the date on it, were done somewhat targeted. I know the other one has been referred to as the Gene Rule, although I believe it had to do, acts of 2000. No employee of the town, the school district, or BVT is eligible for select board. Now, changing that, you'd have to go to the state house. But again, that's an elected position. I think the voters can make that decision if they feel somebody's the best candidate. That was done to stop someone from running, and I think possibly force somebody out of office.
So same as with
back in the day.
Another Damon Tinio situation.
I don't know. It just seems like, and there's other things in these bylaws that are like overly restrictive restatements of state law that we can just let state law handle it.
Okay, we're at town meeting.
Actually,
this gets up on the screen. What is your argument in favor of deleting this?
Well, so here's the example where this caused a problem. So Alan Tatro, you had an elected highway surveyor, you voted to make the position appointed, and then his term was up, and we, I'll just say it, in classic Mendon fashion, did nothing, took no action. Alan's out the door. You cannot appoint Alan to come back as the interim appointed highway surveyor because he was an elected official. So they kind of ran into a problem where they ended up, they had to figure out how to cover that position until they could post it. But it caused a problem there where I think, again, the ethics can govern how that can be handled. So I think my argument at town meeting is that the state ethics laws have plenty of restrictions to prevent actual conflicts of interest. Versus, again, saying that, a member of the planning board can't get hired as a 10-hour-a-week clerk in the library. I don't see why that's a problem.
You said it was
illegal in this bylaw.
You said it was the Gene Rule. What was Gene's last name?
Berthold.
Oh, okay.
But I think give Gene a call sometime. I think it was other things going on in town at the time.
Jean appointed as a interim select board member because all 3 select board members had resigned at that point?
Yeah, but at one point, Jean was on the select board and the principal assessor. So once this came into effect, she finished out her term and then did not run
Well,
again.
I think
That's not
she
this.
was
That's the
on the
home rule.
I think she was on the select board because the 3 members of the select board resigned all at once.
Why did that happen?
I think there was some crazy legal things going on, and yeah.
I mean,
So-
yeah, I asked some other people on the history of this. I think, I don't know. And I know maybe Ellen had some thoughts if you talked to her sometime. I think it's unduly restrictive.
I guess my question would be, is there any other town in the area that has something similar to this?
Similar to this restriction?
Correct. Or are we unique? And that's what I'd want to explore. Dan, do you know of any?
I don't, but I don't look at other things. So
That might
You'd
be
have to
something
ask around.
Ellen might
I-
know.
I have a lot of action items on my plate. Would somebody be willing to do some
Try.
research?
Yeah. Yeah. So self-dealing and nepotism, participating as a municipal employee in matter which you, your immediate family, your business organization has a financial
Yeah.
interest is prohibited. So that's like the state ethics.
Yeah, that's not what we're
Yeah.
talking about here, though. They're talking about a blanket ban on town employees from running for office.
Yeah. But I can research this a little further. Like I said, I think there's enough restrictions in the state ethics that cover the major issues with this bylaw that avoid the other, So 1 year cooling off period. I don't know. I'll have to look at this further.
Would someone from the board want to do some research as well?
Sure, I can take a look at it.
Thank you.
It's funny, I'm on the Town of Uxbridge website right now. When you look at charters and bylaws, it automatically has a link to the Mass Conflict of Interest laws. It doesn't even
Right.
have anything in their bylaws about this.
Right. I think it might be uniquely Mendon because of, which is ironic because I know they call themselves uniquely Uxbridge. But I think, what is it? What is our version of that? I can't think of anything that begins with that. Magnificent Mendon. But again, I think this is a reactive bylaw that was made for a specific reason that was going on at the time. And I agree that maybe we should look at it, but I also think we should explore to see if there is any utility to it remaining as well, and if other towns have something similar, because I don't want people to think that we're doing it just as a favor to, so that some certain town employees can run for office, So I want us to do our due diligence, Thank you for researching, Joanne.
You're welcome.
I think that brings us to the end of the agenda I had laid out for tonight. I admit I did not expect us to get through this stuff as fast as we did. I was afraid I was loading too much on there. But now we have some action items. Also, we're going to be asking some people to come to the next few meetings to discuss some of these things further. So I think next meeting will probably be a little bit more stacked, so to speak.
I'm sharing my screen, so the lines in red are things that are going to be getting done. So I'll be summarizing this and sending out an email saying, here are
I
the
can't-
action items. And I'll send out another email with the minutes.
Perfect. Yeah, if you could send that, that would be awesome. Well, you're right there. Any other thoughts anyone else has? On anything we discussed tonight?
Do you want me to email Kathy Schofield?
Sure.
Okay.
That works. Thank you.
But in terms of when she comes, Tom's setting the agenda.
Yeah. Well,
So
let's
you'd want to coordinate with Tom on when in January, February she'd come to a meeting.
let's see if she'll come in February
February? Okay.
for first meeting in February. And I'll see if Dave can come, Kersey can come to the same one.
I'd
Maybe
like to get the noise ordinance going. If we're going to present that at town meeting, we should start working in January.
Okay. I know Ann Mazar was going to be on our next agenda, and I know she had several things to discuss. So maybe we could see if Dave Kersey could come to our second meeting in
When is
January.
our next meeting? Is it January 8th?
Yes.
Would
Yeah.
that be a selectmen's meeting that night as well? Because their meeting's tonight.
Well, so usually they're the first and third.
Okay,
We only picked this date because
Christmas.
we didn't want to meet on Christmas.
okay,
So
So
yeah, 8th and 22nd.
all
8th
right.
and 22nd at 6:30.
Hey,
So should I see if Kathy's available to come on February 5th? That would be 2 weeks after the 22nd.
So I think it would actually be Valentine's Day. Right? No, wait,
Second one.
I'm in the wrong year. Hold on. I'm in 24. I forgot we're starting a new year soon.
12.
Yeah,
12th.
February 12th.
Okay. Oh yeah, you're right.
February 12th. And then we can discuss that then. So unless
I'll when I write something up, I'll have these particular ones laid out. And Mazar first week, police chief second, then working our way through.
we also, since I checked, we had the fire chief wants to get on our agenda as well. So
yeah,
maybe we can get him at the second February meeting. Unless we think it won't take much time.
Just
It's
like
about-
looking ahead of things, and then this is like very far ahead of things for the end of February. So if we're going to meet on the 12th, then the 26th would be the next one. I absolutely will not be able to come on that night. So I don't know if that would affect things if we were going to be talking to people.
Okay.
Just for planning further ahead, I just wanted to put that out there. I have the bar exam, so
Gotcha. That's a good reason.
that is a very good reason.
You're going to be
And
kind of
also-
distracted the month before that too.
yeah, I should be okay. It'll be fine, but that date I will not be pulling it together enough to sign in at night.
How far, I got a question though now, how far ahead from town meeting do we have to have these finalized to be able to get on the warrant at town meeting?
8 weeks.
8 weeks, so that would bring us to beginning April then, right? Or more, less,
March.
March.
So I mean nobody says that we have to overhaul all of the general bylaws for May town meeting, right?
No.
That's why it's an ongoing review.
We want to get the section 3, get the date of the election nailed down.
And probably our voting method as well.
Yeah,
And depending on how we get with the noise ordinance, that would be something that will get people aware that we exist and that we're responsive to people.
So yeah, I see that. Those are both priorities. All right. Well,
After we meet with the police chief on the noise ordinance and hash something out, the next one is to reach out to the noisy people on Facebook, and then we set up talk about whether we have a public hearing and publish in the newspaper and post on Facebook that we're doing it and stuff like that, and have a in-person meeting in town hall.
that sounds good. So next meeting looks like the agenda. We just confirmed. So we're gonna talk with Dave Kersey. Let's have him come to the next one. As well as Ann Mazar. I think we should be able to accommodate both. Then the 22nd, let's have Isabella Genova, the conservation agent.
I'll find out whether she's got something. So when are you looking for Isabella?
The 22nd, she submitted on our form for the
Yep.
wetlands protection and earth removal. And then let's also have Jason Bangma, the fire chief on the 22nd.
Okay.
And then continue our ongoing review. So tell me the next one we, in addition to what we just talked about, we're going to look at chapter 4 and 5. Okay. Any other thoughts? Otherwise, I'll accept a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move we adjourn.
I
All right,
second.
All in favor, please state your name.
Who seconded it?
Joanne seconded.
Yeah. Carl Hummel, yes.
Tom Morale, yes.
Christina Campbell, yes.
Joanne
All right.
Lamoth, yes.
All right, well, have a great night, everyone. I'll see you in a few weeks, and have
Yep.
a happy holiday, Merry Christmas,
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas to you
whatever you
all.
might celebrate. Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.